Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're going to be tackling a pretty big question, one that's been debated for centuries, really.
Yeah.
The arguments for the existence of God.
Big one.
Yeah. And to guide us, we'll be looking at the book 20 Compelling Evidences That God Exists.
Oh, I've heard good things about that one.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating. It doesn't just stick to theological arguments. It
Yeah.
pulls in stuff from philosophy, science, history.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's like a detective novel for your brain.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
One of the things I really appreciated about it was how it kind of addresses that, that feeling you get when someone brings up religious truth.
Oh, totally. It's like
Right.
we can all agree on basic facts, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't put lemonade in your gas tank.
Right.
But when it comes to religion, it's like suddenly everyone's like, well, that's just your opinion, man.
Exactly. It's like this weird exception we make. And the book dives into that head on. It talks about how modern skepticism and especially postmodernism have kind of shaped how we see truth.
Okay, so for those of us who might not be philosophy buffs, could you break down what postmodernism is and how it plays into all this?
Sure. Basically, postmodernism says that knowledge isn't like some objective reality out there. It's a human construct.
So, like, we're making it all up.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. The book points this out, too. If all knowledge is just a construct, then wouldn't that make postmodernism itself a construct?
Whoa, hold on. So it's like saying there's no such thing as truth, but being absolutely certain about that statement.
Right. It kind of undermines its own argument. And that's why the book encourages us to, really think critically about all these truth claims, which is super important these days with so much information flying around.
It's like everyone's shouting their truth from the rooftops. But how do we know which voices to trust?
That's the million-dollar question.
Okay, so before we get into the evidence for God, the book talks about different worldviews.
Yeah, those are kind of like the lenses we use to see the world, right?
Exactly. And one of those lenses is atheism.
Right. And the book explores how atheism explains the universe. It boils down to, it just is.
It just is. I feel like I've heard that somewhere before.
Maybe that famous Carl Sagan quote, "The cosmos is all there is, all there was, and all there ever will be."
Oh, yeah. It sounds kind of straightforward, but are there any, potential roadblocks with that view? Like, how do you explain where the universe came from if there's no creator or anything?
That's one of the big challenges for atheism. It also struggles to explain the fine-tuning of the universe. You see, the universe is incredibly precise. It's like this giant machine where every setting is perfectly dialed in for life to exist.
Wait, so you're saying the universe is like a perfectly tuned guitar or something. What does that even mean, perfectly tuned?
Imagine baking a cake. You need the right amount of flour, sugar, eggs.
Yeah, otherwise it's a disaster.
Exactly. The universe is kind of like that. There are all these fundamental constants, like gravity, the speed of light, the mass of an electron. If any of those were even slightly different, the universe as we know it wouldn't exist. Stars couldn't form, planets wouldn't be stable.
Life would be impossible.
Exactly.
Okay, so is this where the idea of a cosmic designer comes in? Like someone had to bake this universe just right?
That's one possible explanation. The book looks at both the atheistic multiverse theory and the design argument.
Multiverse. Hold on, I think I've heard that term thrown around before, but I'm not really sure what it means. Can you explain?
Sure. So the multiverse theory suggests there are tons of universes out there, each with its own set of physical laws. And ours just happens to be the one where conditions are right for life.
So it's like winning the cosmic lottery.
Basically.
Yeah.
But the book also points out that there's no scientific proof for the multiverse. It's totally hypothetical.
So like a cool idea, but not much to back it up.
Exactly.
Okay, then what about the design argument? What makes that explanation compelling?
The odds of the universe being so precisely tuned just by chance are mind-bogglingly small. Mathematician Roger Penrose actually calculated it. The odds against it happening randomly are 1 in 10 to the power of 11283. It's practically impossible.
Wow, that makes winning the actual lottery seem like a walk in the park. So if it's not random chance, then does that mean there's a mind behind it all, a cosmic designer?
That's the question the book wants us to grapple with. Even some scientists who aren't necessarily religious have acknowledged this apparent design, like physicist Ed Harrison called it prima facie evidence of deistic design.
And what about astronomer Richard Morris? Didn't he say something about the universe being consciously designed?
Yeah, he said it's almost as though the universe had been consciously designed.
Consciously designed. That definitely implies a creator, like this God. So if we're leaning towards the consciously designed idea, where does that leave us?
That's what we'll keep digging into as we explore more of the evidence presented in this book.
All right, so the universe is mind-bogglingly precise. But how did life get started in the first place? I mean, that's a huge GE question too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The origin of life is one of the biggest mysteries out there. For a long time, the primordial soup theory was kind of the go-to explanation.
Yeah, the primordial soup. I remember learning about that in school. But honestly, it always sounded kind of too simple. Like, could life really just poof into existence from some random mix of chemicals?
It does sound kind of like magic, doesn't it? The more we learn about the conditions on early Earth, the less likely that scenario seems. Life appeared way too soon after Earth's formation for such a complex process to happen naturally.
It's like that apple pie analogy from the book. If you tell your kids the pie needs 30 minutes to cool and then 2 minutes later it's gone, you wouldn't think, oh, it must have spontaneously disappeared. You'd think someone got to it early.
Exactly. And when you zoom in on the building blocks of life, it gets even more complicated. Take, for example, the handedness of amino acids.
Okay, I'm going to need a little help here. Amino acids. Handedness. What are we talking about?
Okay, so think about your hands. They're mirror images of each other, right?
Yeah.
Well, amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins, are kind of like that too. They come in left-handed and right-handed forms.
Okay, I'm following so far.
But here's the thing. Life on Earth only uses left-handed amino acids. When scientists try to recreate the conditions of early Earth in a lab, they always get a mix of both left and right-handed molecules.
So you're saying that life forming randomly is kind of like trying to win a Scrabble game with half the letters upside down?
The odds are stacked against it. And it gets even more complex. The book brings up Michael Beheat's concept of irreducible complexity.
Hmm.
Basically, it means that some biological systems, like the bacterial flagellum, this tiny little motor that helps bacteria move around, need all their parts to be there from the start in order to function. They can't evolve gradually, piece by piece.
So it's like trying to build or working bicycle by just throwing a bunch of parts in a box and shaking it. Some things just need all the right pieces in place from the get-go. Is that what this irreducible complexity idea is all about?
Exactly. BK uses the example of a mousetrap. You need the platform, the hammer, the spring, the catch. If you take away any one part, the whole thing is useless.
Yeah.
This suggests a designer, not random chance.
It's a pretty compelling point. I appreciate that the book doesn't shy away from tough questions like the problem of evil. If there's a good and powerful God, why is there so much suffering in the world? I mean, that's something a lot of people struggle with.
It's a huge question. And the book kind of flips the script and challenges atheism on moral grounds. You see, if there's no God, no ultimate source of morality, then how do we account for our sense of right and wrong?
Yeah, it can't just be about survival of the fittest, right? Some things just feel inherently wrong, regardless of whether they help us survive or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book argues that our moral intuition goes much deeper than that. Like, take child abuse, for example. We instinctively know that's wrong. It's not just because it disrupts society. There's a deeper sense that it's evil. On the other hand, rescuing someone from a burning building, that feels inherently good, whether or not it benefits our species in the long run.
So if atheism has trouble explaining our sense of morality, what about pantheism? That's the idea that everything is God, right?
Pantheism has its own set of challenges. If everything is part of this divine, interconnected being, then how do you explain evil? How can a being that's supposed to be perfectly good do evil things? It's a tough one to reconcile.
It's like trying to mix oil and water. Okay, so we've looked at some philosophical and scientific arguments, but what about historical evidence? Does history back up the idea of a God?
Well, that's where the Bible comes in. Now, before you switch off, the book isn't saying you have to take everything in the Bible literally. It acknowledges there are different interpretations and debates, but it emphasizes that the general reliability of the Bible's text and the major narratives, it's not really in question.
So are you saying that the Bible can be trusted as a historical source?
The book makes a strong case for it, and it's actually supported by archaeology. The more we dig, the more we find evidence that lines up with biblical accounts, especially in the later periods. One cool example the book mentions is the Admonitions of Ippur. It's this ancient Egyptian text, and it describes events that are strikingly similar to the biblical plagues of Exodus.
Wait, are you serious? So there might be evidence for the plagues outside of the Bible? That's wild. What does it say?
Well, it talks about the Nile turning to blood, plagues on cattle, destruction by fire, even female slaves wearing jewelry, which could be a reference to the Israelites taking valuables from the Egyptians before they left. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Wow, it does sound an awful lot like the Exodus story. But the Bible's not just historical accounts, right? What about those prophecies, those predictions about the future? Are those considered evidence too?
Right. And the book points to fulfilled prophecy as evidence for divine inspiration. It focuses on a prophecy from Genesis 12, where God promises Abraham that his descendants will become a great nation and a blessing to others.
That's a pretty bold prediction. Did it actually come true?
Well, the book argues that it did. Even if you use the most skeptical timeline and date the prophecy to the 5th century BC, that's still centuries before the events it describes. And through Abraham's lineage came the nation of Israel, which played a key role in the spread of Christianity. And we all know how much impact Christianity has had on Western civilization.
Yeah, it's hard to deny Christianity's influence, even if you're not a believer. I mean, it's everywhere. Art, music, law, ethics. It's woven into the fabric of our world.
Exactly. Historians like Stanley Jockey and William Foxwell Albright have argued that the Judeo-Christian worldview, with its emphasis on a rational and orderly universe created by God, well, they say that paved the way for the scientific revolution. It's mind-blowing to think about how these ancient prophecies might have actually shaped the course of history. But the book makes it clear that the heart of Christianity lies in one central figure, Jesus.
So that brings us to the big question. Who is Jesus? And what makes him so special?
Well, that's what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive. Buckle up. Things are about to get really interesting.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the arguments for God's existence. We've talked about the fine-tuning of the universe, the origin of life, even touched on the problem of evil. But now it's time to talk about the big one, Jesus.
This is really where the book gets to the heart of it all. It argues that Jesus isn't just some historical figure. He's the ultimate revelation of God.
You know, even if you're not a Christian, it's hard to deny the impact Jesus has had. I mean, you can't really understand the world today without understanding the influence of Christianity, right?
Absolutely. Christianity is the world's largest religion, and even Islam, the second largest, recognizes Jesus as a prophet. He's a central figure in two of the most dominant faiths on the planet.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. The book describes how compelling Jesus was as a person. He wasn't just some stuffy religious leader, you know. He was intelligent, had a sense of humor, was incredibly passionate. He challenged people, inspired them, and just had this way of connecting with them on a deep level.
The book actually quotes theologian Tom Wright, who said, "If God were to make himself known supremely and definitively in one human being, this is what he would be like."
Wow, that's powerful. It makes you wonder, if we had lived back then, would we have recognized Jesus? Would we have been drawn to him? Or would we have been part of the crowd calling for his crucifixion? It's a question worth thinking about, you know?
And it leads to a crucial point. Jesus didn't just teach good morals or offer spiritual wisdom. He made some incredibly bold claims, even controversial claims about himself.
Like claiming to be God.
Exactly. And this is what sets Jesus apart from other religious figures who are often considered great teachers. With Jesus, there's no middle ground. He's not ambiguous.
It's like that old saying, he's either God, a lunatic, or a liar.
Right. The book points out that the Jesus was just a good teacher approach runs into some problems, especially when you consider his claims to be one with God and the only way to salvation. Those aren't claims you can easily dismiss.
And then, of course, there's the whole question of Jesus' death and resurrection. Did the book present that as historical fact?
It does. The crucifixion is widely accepted by historians, even those who are skeptical of his divinity. But the resurrection is where the real debate lies.
So what evidence does the book offer for the resurrection?
Well, it starts with the empty tomb. All four Gospels mention it. And while they might differ on some of the details, the core fact remains the same. The tomb was empty.
But couldn't someone have stolen the body? Or maybe Jesus didn't actually die on the cross and just, managed to escape. I've heard those theories before.
The book addresses those arguments. It points out how unlikely they are. Think about it. If the disciples stole the body, why would they then willingly face persecution and even death for proclaiming the resurrection? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does seem a bit far-fetched.
And then there are all the accounts of Jesus appearing to people after the resurrection, to individuals, to groups, including the Apostle Paul. The book points out that these stories were circulating very early on in the Christian community. It makes it very unlikely they were just made up later.
That's interesting. So we have the empty tomb, the eyewitness accounts. Is there anything else that points to the resurrection being real?
The book goes beyond just the historical evidence and points to what it calls the living presence of Christ in his followers.
Living presence, what does that mean?
Well, if Jesus actually rose from the dead and is still alive today, wouldn't you expect to see certain qualities in the people who follow him?
Like what?
Well, love for one another, for example. Early Christian writer Tertullian, he noted that even critics of Christianity were remarking on how much Christians loved each other, and that love has been a driving force in Christian missions and social reform throughout history.
And Christianity has spread incredibly fast, even when facing persecution, hasn't it? That's pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. The book shares some powerful stories of transformed lives, too, like the Huarani people of Ecuador. They saw a huge decrease in violence and an increase in well-being after they embraced Christianity. It's a real testament to the power of faith to change lives.
That's incredible. Okay, so last but not least, the book addresses the question of whether all religions are equally valid. What's its take on that?
Well, this is where the book really emphasizes the uniqueness of Christ. While other religions might offer different paths to different understandings of God or ultimate reality, Christianity is unique in that it points to Jesus as the ultimate revelation of God.
So you're saying he's not just a prophet or a teacher, but he is, in essence, God himself.
That's the central claim of Christianity.
Wow. That's a lot to unpack. We've covered so much ground today. Science, history, philosophy, personal experiences. But ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide what we believe.
That's right. The book doesn't give you easy answers, and it doesn't try to force a conclusion on you, but it does leave you with this thought-provoking question. If the evidence points toward the truth of Christianity, what does that mean for your life? How would it change your worldview?
It's definitely something to think about. I have to say, this deep dive has given me a lot to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this journey of exploring the evidence for God. If you want to delve deeper into these arguments, we encourage you to check out the book 20 Compelling Evidences That God Exists. And until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep those brains engaged.